cancel culture. How do you feel cancel culture has ultimately become ironic in a sense that it might be toxic itself? Are they taking it too far? How do you feel about cancel culture, and do you think ultimately it might be self-defeating?
Well, when it comes to cancel culture, I'm totally against the cancel culture type of mindset due to the fact we have a First Amendment here in the United States, freedom of speech, freedom to be who we are. That's what made the United States, actually. The moral of the story is this here. People should be able to say what they choose to say without worrying about losing their job or losing their status. And don't get me wrong, if you're the president of the United States, you should be censored to a degree because you have a lot of people that are listening to you. Celebrities should not lose opportunities.
Not
because
necessarily
they
censored,
disagree.
but you should exercise a certain level of discretion, possibly, because
I
you
would never
are
agree with
the
I
leader
would never
of
agree with
an
the cancel
entire nation.
culture. Now, when you had Donald Trump as president, that eliminates the cancel culture right there. You had a president that would say anything he wanted to say. When we get finished talking, President Donald Trump canceled the cancel culture. All right, because you had a president that made fun of disabled people. He made fun of Latino people. He said people from Haiti and South America come from shithole countries. Made fun of everybody in the United States. Women, talked about groping on women and everything.
He made fun of a famous POW, John McCain.
He made fun of John McCain. He just didn't care. So there shouldn't the cancel. For example, just because I do not agree with you does not mean that I'm against you. There's a hot topic nobody wants to talk about. Now, when it comes to the LGBT community, all right, I may not agree with that, the way their lifestyle or whatever, but that does not mean I'm against them. But if you speak about it, people become very angry with you. And I don't think you should be canceled because you just may not agree. So, Dave Chappelle went through some changes there, made a few comments, but he bounced back. He made a comeback, all right? Now, the one thing I do not like, I don't think nobody that's, African-American people can use the N-word, but people from other races and nationalities should not use the N-word without a doubt. And most of the African-American people should not use the N-word. But, I don't think nobody should be canceled in the Black community for using the N-word. But if you're from another, like I said, if you're from another culture, do not use the N-word, all right? I think it's reserved just for Black people if they choose to use it. All right? And that's
when an instance such as that happens, let's just say, for instance, I think it was Joe Rogan. He was recently under fire for dropping the N-word. What do you think should happen, or how do you feel about those instances? Like, how should the public handle that sort of situation?
Let me just be honest with you. Anybody white that uses the N-word, even if the white guy kind of, he has a relationship with a lot of Black people, and especially Joe Rogan, for example, he's probably used the N-word in settings around Black people because he has a lot of African-American friends or whatever the case may be. But any white person that is well learned out here, a critical thinking white person would know I cannot use this N-word unless I'm really around some Black folks that accept it from me, but I cannot use the word in any other type of setting at all.
Especially a public setting.
Especially a public
and not
setting,
suffer
right?
some sort of blowback, basically, right?
He might be used to using the N-word because he's around some associates that may use the N-word. So I don't use the N-word, as much as I probably used to because it was just commonplace in the hood. My man. It's just the way we talk to each other sometimes. I'm not going to use it now. I just say the N-word, but the reality is that people should not be canceled because they have a different point of view. Now I can see if you like were Nazi extremists or something like that, you were pushing hatred and all that, but sometimes people make mistakes. Like Whoopi Goldberg, she said the Holocaust was not about race. To me, the Holocaust was all about race. She shouldn't be canceled because of that. She got suspended, but at the same time, there should never have been a conversation about canceling Whoopi Goldberg because she made that comment. Think about it. Adolf Hitler, his whole fight was about making the Germans a superior race. Everybody else was inferior to the Germans. So yes, it was about race. I don't know why she didn't get the message, but she shouldn't be canceled because she may have misspoke or something like that in that reality based on her knowledge. Okay. So that's why I'm totally against the cancel culture, because as a matter of fact, I wanted to produce a show titled The FU Show, where I cuss people out for everybody else, because I'm one of them outspoken brothers, right? I want to cuss people out for everybody else, that people that are struggling out here, they're scared to speak their mind. Just tell me what the topic might be and let me say it. Let me talk.
Oh, so basically you would get a topic and then you would just speak your mind on that topic.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And if people were going through changes on their job, being talked down to, their supervisors acting crazy with them, demeaning them, or people are in settings where people are disrespecting them and they're scared to speak up, give me the person's name in the place of employment and let me go to work on them.
Well, I guess so. I guess the big issue is that okay, you say when people maybe pushing hate speech, I'm not really against it. I'm not really for that. I think you should be a little bit more diplomatic in how you say things. Because ultimately I feel like people that are speaking from a place of hate, they may not fully be aware of even what they're saying. I mean, they know what they're saying, but they're not fully educated. And also I think they're just so captured by their emotions that they're just blinded by their emotions. So at what point is the line drawn? You say we should cancel certain types of speech, but what happens if the shoe is on the other foot and you may have people canceling speech that might prove helpful? I mean, like once at a time, that, like for instance in Russia, if you speak out against the war, that's being canceled. Like who would know, like, if the paradigm would switch and those people that are speaking that hate speech would try and cancel rhetoric that was against them. Does that make sense?
What makes sense, but the moral of the story is we have become too sensitive as people right now. Okay, people are entitled to their own opinions. See, racism is learned behavior. A lot of people are raised in households where their parents or grandparents are still stuck in a time warp, and they teach their children not to like other races or ethnic groups. And so what happens when a child is 5 or 6 years old and they're sitting down having dinner with their parents and they're telling you, do not mess with the people from the N people, in other words, right? Do not mess with people that are the N word. And then they're being down talking a lot of different ethnic groups. So when that young man turns 18 years old, you cannot really blame that person until they become more exposed to working with people from different nationalities. Now, once they become mature individuals, 25, 26 years old, and they've gone to college and they're around different ethnic groups and cultures, then it's upon that young person to make a determination based on what they see now, opposed to holding on to their old type of belief systems that their parents imparted, onto them. In other words, like whatever their parents imparted into them. Yeah.
Do you think that maybe some aspects of cancel culture or even woke culture, for that matter, have been weaponized?
Yeah. See, cancel culture has been weaponized without a doubt, because you have to understand this. So many people are scared to speak up, and especially if they know something's not right, they won't say anything because they don't want to get canceled. I mean, you can lose your job for being a whistleblower, right? That's not like cancel culture, but you can lose your job. It's the perception. You may have to sit in an interview, for example, and listen to some stuff you shouldn't even be listening to, and it's not right, but you have to get along just to get along. And you may shake your head and say, you're right, no problem, but you go home and you snap on your wife and your family members because as a man or a woman, you should have spoken up. So cancel culture is a bunch of BS to me, providing if I was the president, I wouldn't trip with nobody on what they might say, as long as they don't threaten nobody, talking about killing nobody. Just share your views. I don't even care if your views are racist. That's who you are. I'm not going to cancel you because I would rather know that you are racist than I find out some other kind of way.
Right.
It's okay to just be straight up, man.
And ultimately, I think that by creating this cancel culture, I think you stifle the conversation, because people are afraid to come out and say how they genuinely feel. And they may just be saying canned phrases because they know that is what is acceptable. I think that people, like you said, I think people should be able to freely express exactly how they feel and explore those emotions. And through exploring those emotions and having those real conversations, someone actually might have a change of heart. And they might realize that, hey, you know what? Maybe I am wrong. Now, obviously, that's going to be a very heated conversation that, might result in the exchange of some blows or anything like that. But I feel like it might bring people closer together. I'm not entirely sure. But I do know that there was this black guy. I don't know if he's a journalist or not, but he ultimately secured an interview with a former member of the KKK. And the KKK member did not realize he was black until the interview began. They actually sat down in his hotel room. And at the beginning of the meeting, I believe a soda pop busted, or like some sort of sound was made that resembled a gunshot. And the KKK member's bodyguard was reaching for his gun, but they realized it was just a soda pop that went boom. And they all started laughing after they realized what was about to happen. And they sat down and had a conversation. And so the two men eventually, established a friendship. The black guy would go to the rallies. He would have him over to his house for dinner and things of that nature. And ultimately, the black guy, he just listened to the man speak. He just listened to him.
Right.
And through his interaction, I believe this guy was like the Grand Wizard or some like title or something.
I can recall this
or something.
story.
And he eventually hung up his robe for whatever reason.
I'm familiar with it.
So I think that when you now obviously, and I'm against whatever philosophy the KKK holds. I think that's just an infamous and like just heinous way to think and behave. But I ultimately I think when you push people away from the table, you may ostracize them even more to a point where I don't want to say they feel helpless, but you get what I'm saying. They feel as if they're being ostracized. They no longer have a voice, and that might ramp up their extremism. So, I mean, obviously you want to put a cap on certain behaviors, but at the same time, you have to monitor and, how can I say, mitigate that sort of action through, real conversations. And sometimes you really just can't even come to a happy medium with some people. But I just think, I think the cancel culture has ultimately, even some of the people that might be on the fence, I think it's just preventing them from opening up and having a real discussion. And I think people should be able to express how they feel without, repercussions of saying, oh, you're a racist, or I hate you, I don't like you, this, that, and the third, because ultimately, how can you help that person change their mindset if they don't have a place to explore their feelings and try to learn from that? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense because people mature every day. People learn new information every day. For example, another problem with cancel culture. If you're an entertainer like a Kevin Hart, he was supposed to host the Emmys or the Oscars or something like that.
Okay.
And they went back and pulled some footage of one of his former, previous comedy shows or whatever from almost 15, 20 years ago and used it against him. And they wanted him to apologize for some of the comments that he had made like 20 years ago. But he said like he's evolved as a comedian. As you can see, he's one of the top comedians right now. He's evolved, right? So the reality cancel culture, no one should be able to go back unless you said you murdered somebody or something, or unless you said something like, I really, really hate somebody to a degree where it's really, really epic or something, paramount to the point where you should not have said it. Like say, if you talked about murdering somebody, that's different. But cancel culture, they go back, especially if you're an aspiring actor, comedian, or aspiring politician, that's why they go back and pull your history up. I don't think your history should be used against you as far as what you say as you are evolving. They want people to be perfect. And once again, Donald Trump broke the cookie cutter. There shouldn't be no cancel culture because you had the president of the United States that said whatever came to his mind. So we have to use former President Trump as a model of why there should not be any cancel culture. And you can take that message to the bank. There's no way he should get away with it, and nobody else can say anything. But Donald Trump can say whatever.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think the reason why he was able to get away with so much is because his base had a ride or die mentality. They were willing to stand by this man despite what he did or said. And ultimately, I think we're getting to a point in society where we're playing it too close to the chest, where people just aren't even afraid to make a contrary opinion because they don't know whether or not it will upset the wrong person, offend the wrong person, and you might make headlining news and they may turn everything on its head and make you to be something that you're not, when you were really just trying to express an opinion that was contrary to whatever was being presented on the other side. And I think you bring up a great point where, you feel like the media wants you to be perfect. I think that this cancel culture is breeding a state of anxiety where people can't make mistakes. People can't be their authentic selves. I just think it's sort of funny how we live in a society nowadays that tells people, be yourself. You know, be true to who you are. Show your person. Love me for who I am. However, at the same time, that's only accepted within a certain parameters. And it's also as if that's being monitored too. Like, it's okay to be yourself in this area, but not this area. And I think a lot of the areas that we are influencing for people to accept themselves actually might be more harmful to the individuals than other areas. Like, I just think it's absolutely wild that one of the areas we're telling people they can't be themselves is freedom of speech and the expression of ideas and original thought. You know, it's almost as if they really don't want you thinking. They want to distract you with all of these other issues.
Exactly.
And they want to, you know, profess that, hey, whatever behavior that you think is okay, whatever behavior is degenerative in a sense, they want to push. But whatever behavior is uplifting, they want to stifle. And I'm just not with that. Now, I mean, whatever floats your boat, man, you can do. I'm fine with that, you know. But I think that there's a certain limit to you pushing your beliefs off on other people, whatever they may be, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes a lot of sense. It's like with the cancel culture, it's like walking around like Jesse Jackson saying, up with hope, down with dope. I am somebody. You just stay on.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Upward hope, what?
Jesse Jackson, he's always saying, up with hope, down with dope. I am somebody. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. So the reason I'm bringing up this particular example is because what happens is that people dealing with that are afraid of the cancel culture, they're going to stay and walk a fine line. So if you say up with hope, down with dope, no one has a problem with that message. But if you say something like the United States government were complicit with bringing dope into the black communities, then people are going to have a problem with that statement. So it's easier to say up with hope, down with dope, instead of really addressing how the dope got into our damn community.
Right.
If that make any sense, right?
It's not about what you say, it's all about how you say it, right?
But, you know, I put a post up about Huey P. Newton, one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, and some people were, writing on my post saying, well, Huey P. Newton was crazy. Huey P. Newton, shot the police or whatever, but they did not take into consideration that we were the people were living in a very volatile era back then. The relationship with the police and the community was really like one of the worst relationships in Oakland, California, back then, all across the United States.
Huey P. Newton, did he ever kill any police officers or no?
Well, what happened? Huey P. Newton, shot a police officer. Far as now, looking back on his history, I don't want to quote myself the wrong way here. So let me just do what we normally do in the world. We do what they call our due diligence to make sure that
I'm not really sure where I read this, but I don't know.
He shot a police officer because the police. He was jailed for shooting a police officer. Okay. So let's get it right now. That's what I love about the internet. We get a chance to look it up.
That's not to say all the information can be validated, but I mean, at least you have a source of information readily available to reference at any point in time. Here's something that I heard. This might be controversial. I'm not sure how true it is, but I read somewhere that part of the way the Black Panthers were able to get the funding they got is they were actually smuggling drugs as well. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah. Huey P. Newton was cleared of, like killing a police officer. Yes, he did. He was cleared of it. So therefore, he was not convicted of it. So we don't know if he killed a police officer or not. He was cleared of the charges. Okay.
That makes sense. So we don't know whether he shot the police officer or not. We just know he was clear. He was not convicted, but he was charged and he was cleared of those charges.
Yes, he was cleared of the charges, right? And then you talked about the drugs in the community for a second there.
Right. Did you hear anything? I heard they were actually I don't want to say actually, because I don't know how true. I don't know if it's true or not. But I read somewhere that they might have been operatives of the CIA. And then eventually, I guess they came into a lot of money, and they.
Are you talking about the Black Panther Party members?
Yeah. Did you hear anything about that or no?
Never heard anything about the Black Panther Party members receiving any money from the CIA. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I was not around. Huey P. Newton was like one of my forefather type brothers, predecessors, in other words. So I was not around, or whatever the case may be. But the reality, I could not see the Black Panther Party going for the okie doke. Some of us call the CIA the cocaine importation agency. You have to understand, during that history, back in that day and time, there was a war on drugs that President Nixon basically, declared a war on drugs, but it really was a war on poor people. Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seals, Fred Hampton Jr., Mark Clark, Angela Davis would not go for any drugs being pumped into the Black community. That's why it was very important to get rid of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. All right. And secondly, before you respond, let me say this. The drug situation happened like simultaneously as the Black Panther parties were beginning to turn the tables here, dealing with police brutality. Then the CIA, allegedly the CIA imported a lot of the drugs into the Black community, and it actually messed up the Black Power movement to a degree, because a lot of them brothers became strung out on drugs. But there was a white brother named Gary Webb out of San Francisco who broke the story about the CIA. They had an agreement with the Nicaraguan government to import cocaine to the United States to help fund the Nicaraguan war.
Right, they were helping to fund the Contras.
Yes.
Right.
So Gary Webb, they said that he committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the head.
Who committed suicide?
Gary Webb, the Caucasian brother, he was writing for a newspaper in San Francisco, somewhere in California. So after he broke the story, all of a sudden he canceled culture. He was canceled. He could not write for any more newspapers. They put pressure on the newspapers, and apparently they say he killed himself, but by shooting himself in the head 2 times. Never heard of nothing like that before.
Yeah, I don't know how you shoot yourself in the head 2 times.
That's what I'm talking about. That was one of our Caucasian brothers.
Hands for that one.
Yeah, he exposed the story. So you have to understand that I've never heard that the Black Panther Party were involved in any drug sales in the Black community. Not at all.
Yeah, that may have been completely false. May have been some propaganda to advocate against them. Yeah. But I think the CIA actually has a very interesting finding. When they were first founded, I believe they were actually financed by corporate partners, if I have the story correct. And for a long time, they didn't really have an official budget. So they had to find ways to fund themselves. And one of those ways to fund their operations globally was through the smuggling of illicit drugs.
Now,
particularly cocaine.
Later on in the process, Huey P. Newton started using drugs. Allegedly, he became a drug addict.
Okay.
He lost his life. Apparently, a drug dealer in Oakland shot and killed Huey P. Newton. But that doesn't go. That's not the same for Bobby Seals and other Black Panther Party members. So you have to understand the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. They were like one of a kind type of organization. They came along at a much needed time in our history. And Huey P. Newton, he crossed the line. This brother crossed the line. I cannot see him getting caught up in allowing drugs to come into our community. He was too serious, man. Way too serious. I look at him like I'm Huey P. Newton and Malcolm X crazy. And I'm not taking up for him because of the facts were out there that he crossed the line in regards to allowing drugs to be enter our community. I don't think so. Them brothers would not have gone for that. Them brothers would have went all the way. They would have actually declared war on drug dealers if that be the case. The Black Panther Party would have stepped up to the plate without a doubt.
Okay. That makes sense.